You're welcome back. German Finance Minister Wolfgang Schäuble has warned the UK of lasting consequences if it leaves the European Union. This comes as debates heat up over the UK referendum, which comes up on June 23. The Finance Minister adds that a yes vote for the UK to exit the trading bloc may lead to possible exit of more countries from the Union.
German Finance Minister Wolfgang Schäuble says he could not disregard the possibility of other countries quitting the European Union if Britain votes to leave. This was stated in an interview with German news magazine Der Spiegel, published online last weekend. According to Schäuble, Britain could suffer economic consequences if it quits the 28-member bloc, given that it is closely interlinked with partner countries. Britons will vote on June the 23rd on whether to leave the world's largest trading bloc, a decision with far-reaching implications for politics, the economy, trade, defense and migration in Britain and the reset of the EU. In the interview, he said a Brexit could also have a negative impact on partner countries, but he and his counterparts in the Eurozone will do all they could to limit these consequences.
It shouldn't be yes or no. It should be how much integration do you want, right? Like, do you want to be a full federal union, or do you want to just be a trade zone, or what are we really looking for? So I think that's the problem with a referendum. You're asking 65 million people the wrong question. It's not a yes or no. It's a what degree of integration do you really want?
German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier said in May that a Europe without Britain will not continue as per normal. Polls suggest a neck-to-neck race between the Leave and Remain camps ahead of the vote. The Leave camp was 10 points ahead of Remain, with less than 2 weeks to go before Britain's referendum on whether to stay in the European Union, according to a poll by ORB for the Independent newspaper published on Friday. ORB's online survey of 2,000 people conducted on June 8 to 9 suggested that Leave was on 55% versus 45% for Remain. Sterling lost more than half a cent against the dollar soon after the poll was released.
An international labor organization says it plans to further curb child labor in the world, which has reduced by a third in the last 10 years. According to the labor body, it expects employers to eliminate child labor from the supply chains.
This week, the International Labour Organization said that international standards now in place have reduced child labor by about 1/3 in the last decade. As around the world, 168 million children are in or at risk for child labor, and current levels of crisis and conflict heighten their vulnerability to exploitation. Now, employers and business commonly expect to eliminate child labor from their supply chains, many of whom work in agriculture, manufacturing and construction industries.
From enterprises, we need a clear message of zero tolerance of child labor. They need to know what is happening in their supply chains and to back that up with action in their business practices and dealings with suppliers.
Businesses can no longer blame governments when child labor has been exposed.
If a business can subcontract its tax affairs to some remote destination, there is no excuse whilst they can't discover in their supply chains where their suppliers are using child labour. The time for excuses is over. The political winds have changed. We have the Ruggie principles in place. We have OECD guidelines in place. We have the conversation here at the ILO on the supply chain. And we simply don't buy the argument that it's all the fault of government.
Nearly 21 million people globally are victims of forced labor, an industry which generates $150 billion a year in illegal profits, says the International Labour Organization. The British charity Anti-Slavery International on its website documents 122 products made by child laborers across 58 countries ranging from Latin America to Asia. These children might be employed at the start of the supply chain, forced into mines to extract gold, mica, diamonds and coal, or made to toil in farms to produce commodities. Campaigners trying to combat forced and child labor and poor working conditions have unveiled a variety of approaches to follow to ensure the goods they buy are ethical. Last month, Human Rights Watch said a new international treaty was required to compel businesses to stamp out abuses such as child labor and modern-day slavery in their supply chains.
The World Bank says it has so far spent about 7.78 billion naira, the third national Fadama development project, additional financing as part of efforts to support Nigeria's agriculture and economic diversification drive of the federal government. The bank also said that it would commence its Fadama implementation support mission from the 10th to 27th of June across 8 states of the country in conjunction with the with the Ministry of Finance and Agriculture. It added that the additional financing would support clusters of farmers in 6 selected states with comparative advantage and high potential to increase production and productivity of cassava, rice and sorghum, as well as horticulture value chains, and link them to better organized markets. Now, joining me to discuss this development further is a farmer and an agriculture expert, Mr. African Farmer Mogaji. Welcome to Business Incorporated.
Thank you.
Now, what is your assessment of this project, the Fadama project?
Well, I think it's a brilliant idea from the World Bank. They've been doing that for some time. It's meant to help in terms of road infrastructure, meeting the needs of rural farmers, basically. However, that being said, implementation, it's a challenge around here.
Implementation. We've had 2 previous phases, but this is the 3rd one.
Yes.
How was the outcome of the 2 previous ones?
Well, if you go into the rural communities across board in the states in which these projects are being implemented, you probably give them 40%. But what's happening now, the new development, the tweak to it is now getting the farmers to work with processors to channel their produce to them. The main challenge has been that once the fund is released and it leaves the hands of the organizers, when it has to get to the government, because government is involved, implementation from that point is a challenge with the farmers.
Does that affect the number of farmers that actually get this funding?
Yes, it does. Well, really, it does, and not really. What do I mean by that? You have a number of registered farmers to participate. They start off, so that means you have the total number projected. However, how many farmers complete the project? That's where the issue is, because when they don't get what they need at the time they need it, most of them back out. But when it's been reported, it's still reported as the total number that registered and started.
Was there enough monitoring by the World Bank officials in the country as regards how well this project were executed?
I believe the World Bank needs to do more. They need to get third parties to follow through on the project from implementation. As it's been kicked off, they need to get involved in all the process, because at the end of the day, they monitor the beginning, they get reports, but they are not involved in the implementation.
Now, we understand that the financing is expected to assist farmers in 6 selected states. How does this complement efforts by the federal government to actually grow the agriculture sector? We all remember the Anchor Burrows program that was launched in some states of the federation. How does this project complement it?
Well, any kind of help that the government gets now, either in training or in fund finance, goes a long way. It reduces how much they have to spend. And if World Bank really monitors this project well, it reduces the staff, it ensures food security also, and food safety in the value chain in which the government is looking at. And the good thing about this project now is they're looking into the produce or the crops or the project in which government is planning as against bringing in a new perspective to what government wants to do.
So, they're not just looking at just rice.
Yeah.
They're also extending that to
rice,
sorghum,
cassava, sorghum, and I say cassava is a major crop in which this project would add value to.
Also, the Fadama Farmers Community Association, which has received provisional and operational license from the central bank, that was also established by the World Bank. I think it saw that through to this stage. Now, what impact will these have really on growing the agriculture sector, not just the Fadama project now, but the entire sector?
Well, I've been in this sector for 21 years, and I'm a bit wary when it has to do with government. And till date, it's still the same. However, this administration from the Ministry of Agriculture is doing its best to ensure that these assistance gets to the farmers. So I'm optimistic. At the same time, maybe 4 months down the line, we'll be able to assess that.
Okay, 4 months down the line. So what advice would you have for the federal government in this respect?
Yeah, to get NGOs to have a direct line where the beneficiaries can contact if something is going wrong. That way, there's a check and balance.
Thank you so much, African farmer Mogaji.
Thank you.
A farmer himself and an agriculture expert, talking about the World Bank Fadama project. We'll go on a break, and when we come back, it will be time to take a look at the domestic fixed income market.